Hi, my name is Superintendent Mike Morris, and thank you for joining us to this live stream this morning about Pelham Preschool. We have two other folks with me. I'll let them introduce themselves as well.
Hi, good morning. My name's Lee Whiting-Jones. I'm the new principal at Pelham Elementary School.
And my name is Carol Scotti. I am the Pelham Preschool teacher.
And thanks to all of you for joining us this morning. Really, we're going to have a very brief introduction and share the context, and then hopefully have some conversation. The way the conversations work, if you're following this on YouTube, is in the lower right-hand corner of your screen. You should see that there's a comment bar where you can type something that would come through as a live chat, and we can bring that up so it's visible to everyone. As well as answer those questions that we have. But really, our spiel is quite brief this morning. It's really an opportunity for families to be able to ask questions, understand the current situation, what our current plans are, the flexibility that our current plans are having to be built with in the current climate, and really help you to get to a decision point that'll help us for our planning. So if you can use the comment bar, even just to say hello, that way we know that you're able to comment. We'd love for you even just to say hi, or we hear you, or good morning, or something like that. That'd be helpful for us to be able to have. It generally takes about 6 to 10 seconds for your comments to, once you make them, to come onto our screen. So while I'm doing an introduction, if you are able to do that, it'd be helpful for us. So I just want to start by sharing the context. So we talked about the setup Pelham School Committee meeting recently. The couple things we know are that Pelham Preschool is a beloved part of the Pelham School experience for a great number of our youngest children. We believe in the benefits of preschool for all of our students and all of our districts, and the Pelham Preschool provides a wonderful foundation for students to do that. And we have a lot of testimonials for families and staff because they see the value in that. The current situation, the Pelham Preschool was developed all the way back, I think it was 2012 or 2013, and we're really appreciative that it has been, because it's been generations of kids who have now gone through that Pelham Preschool, and many of whom have continued on to Pelham School. One of the things that we are challenged by at the current moment, it was built as a self-sustaining preschool. In other words, it does not receive any state funding. It's not an integrated preschool in the way the Crocker Farm is, that has a calculation of 7 out of 15 students have to have special needs, and there's slots and there's a formula. That's not the case for the Pelham Preschool. The Pelham Preschool accepts students. There's some different pay structures that are involved, but it's fully self-sustained. And as the town of Pelham and the Pelham School Committee set it up, it was intentionally designed to be self-sustaining because it was really supposed to support the Pelham School experience, and it has. One of the challenges during this pandemic is March 13th, I made the decision to close all schools in the 3 districts I work for, Pelham, Amherst, and the Regional School District, and that included the Pelham Preschool as well as the other preschool at Crocker Farm Elementary School. As you know, over time, the governor stepped in and declared that schools were going to be closed for the rest of the spring. At this point right now, our transmission rates in Massachusetts, Western Mass in particular, are quite low. We are planning on being back in person and through a phased model. Our youngest students would be at the front end of that phased model, because we know that they enjoy enjoy is probably the wrong word. I think they do, but not that older kids do not enjoy, but they benefit from live in-person instruction at the highest level, just developmentally where they are. And so we're deeply appreciative of our preschool staff, and we're deeply appreciative that we live in, probably, I said this in a public meeting last week, probably 1/4 or 20% of the country, in my personal opinion, should be thinking about reopening schools at all. And we happen to live in that 20%. If we're in California or Texas or Florida or South Carolina or many, many other places, I think I would have deep reservations about that. Right now, we look good in Massachusetts. You know, a lot of recommendations are, if the testing rate's over 5%, schools shouldn't open. You know, we're at 1.9. We were at 1.6 last week. We have to watch those trends, right? But we are still well under the metrics of that. The challenge is we don't know if that'll change. we can hope. We think there's some, I believe our governor's taken some strong steps of not reopening things like amusement parks and water parks and things that have opened, even neighboring states like Connecticut and New Hampshire. But we don't really know how the virus will travel. We don't know how the increase in other states will affect Massachusetts and the Northeast. So it's something we're watching for. And the reality for our preschool program is if we're going to plan to run it next year, we really need a commitment from families to be able to compensate staff, which is through our tuition, all year long, whether it's live or it's in a virtual format. Otherwise, we can't financially, the Pelham School Committee can't financially take on that risk in very challenging financial times. So today, what we're trying to see is what questions community members have about that. What does it look like live? What does it look like in person? What are some of the benefits of the program? I want to be really clear that our staff members will have positions in one of my districts, regardless of what happens. That's one question I've gotten from a number of families already is, does this mean people will be unemployed? And I affirmatively can say no to that question. That being said, I think the Pelham Preschool has shown time and time again that it has strong family support and staff support. And this time we're trying to figure out, can we financially take the risk to run it next year, or does it have to go on hiatus for a year? And we only will know that when we have confirmed commitments from families. And we need to figure that out probably in the next week because both the staff need to know what their jobs will be next year and families need to know whether the preschool is running next year. So this is really the opportunity. I know some people have called since the letter that Principal Whiting-Jones wrote and talked to her, but we wanted to have both, Ms. Lottie and myself on the call to see if there were questions, what the questions would be. So again, people can just type in their questions on the, through the YouTube feature. I'll type in something so you can see at least one question come through. It's not really a question, but that way you can see how it comes up. And really, we're here to answer any questions that anyone in the community might have for any of us. It could be for me, it could be for principal, or it could be for our staff member. So while we're waiting for questions to come in again, because it takes slower this morning, it's taking about 10 seconds because I have both screens open. I didn't know if, Carol, if you'd like to share anything, or Lee, if you'd like to share anything, as well as more questions. Even mine took quite a while to pop up. If you'd like to share anything more about the program or anything more about the situation, just want to give other people an opportunity to chat, and then hopefully we'll get more questions rolling and can have a little more interactive dialogue. Would either of you like to jump in?
Okay, I guess I'll jump in.
Thank you.
And just mention that I really am excited that there's been an outpouring of support, and I know that it's a difficult time for parents, especially parents that are new to having children in preschool. And I just want you to know that I'm certainly here to support you and answer any questions that you may have to help you make the best decision for your family.
And I do see a question came up. It's a really good one. So I'm just going to read it out loud to make sure everyone can see that or can hear it. Hi, thanks for chatting today with the preschool following the DESE guidelines or the EEC guidelines for closing and restrictions. So I can start with this, and then Carol and Lee, you can jump in. Our preschool program at Pelham is really unique. There are not as many there's a lot of integrated preschools because of the child find requirements. So the preschool at Crocker Farm actually services students for Pelham who have disabilities who require that level of service, and that's through an agreement between the town of Pelham and town of Amherst. So there's a lot of clarity on those type of programs which follow DESE guidance. This program is sort of an in-between program because DESE had to allow us to open it back 8-9 years ago. But it's not a integrated program. So it falls in a gray area. So I think the clarity for the closing and restrictions that I would have is we would be reducing the number of students because I think our primary guidelines we've been using is the original CDC guidelines. And those sort of for me, trump the DESE ones. And we've done that actually even at the K-12 level, where DESE has had guidelines. And if they were anything less than what was recommended by the Centers for Disease Control, we defaulted to the most conservative guidelines from a health and safety perspective. But I'll stop talking and see if Carol and Lee have anything they'd like to add to that. Okay, I think that describes it. So roughly we'd be thinking about 10 students, the size of the room. I think Lee has mapped out, I think it was a little over 1,000 square feet. Is that right?
No, this room's actually about 840 square feet. So if it were a K-6 classroom, we would say 18 students could fit comfortably with 6 feet of space. But given the needs of the early childhood environment, we felt much more comfortable with a number closer to 10
And I think the other thing
students.
to note from my perspective is we would not expect preschoolers to stay in desks most of the day, the way that you might think at a middle school, high school level, even at a middle or upper elementary grade level. That's not what 3 and 4 and 5-year-olds are designed to do. And so certainly there are some seat activities. I'm not suggesting there aren't, and we'd have to have seating that would keep students reasonable distance apart, to Principal Whiting-Jones' point. But I think at a larger level, we know there's going to be activity and movement, and it would look different because we would not want to have the close proximity. One thing that is still being discussed, including this morning actually by me and another group of superintendents, is what are we doing with masks? Because that is one of the things in the guidelines. So I would say that is one sort of outstanding question that we're still trying to have. At the DESE guidelines, masks are not required for students under grade 2. I've already made the decision at grades K and 1 that face coverings are required. I'm using different terms, so you might notice there's a difference between face coverings and masks. But I think for some students at the primary grades, a face covering that might be kind of like a face shield might be appropriate, not at the upper grade levels, but certainly when we think about preschool, that may be a better fit for some students. But I think if we are running the preschool, that's where we start having individual conversations with families about what's going to work best. I know for the preschools that have opened up in the community, private preschools, in the larger community, most of them are requiring masks. So I do think we'll probably land in the place that's closer to the EEC guidelines around some of those pieces as opposed to the DESE, which are designed much more for the K-12 environment. Sorry, I was really long-winded, but it's an excellent question, and there's a lot there to share on that. Carol, you don't have to, but I don't know if there's anything else you'd like to share on that.
I think that covers it well. And just another piece with the cleaning and the sanitation of toys and all of those pieces. I have an extensive EEC background, and I would want to, of course, implement the strictest of cleaning standards and all of the rest of the pieces that go along with keeping the environment physically safe as well.
Yeah, thank you, Carol. I appreciate that. So let's see if there are other questions that come in. For those of you who haven't been to Pelham Preschool before, as we're waiting and maybe prompting some other questions, it's at the back end of the building. It's by the early childhood area, so right across the hall from kindergarten, which I don't know how you feel, Carol. I always thought was a lovely spot to be with other young children and to be able to see those children on a routine basis and see what kindergartens are there. And there's site visibility to a certain extent even across the hall. And I think that's a really nice thing. I wondered if, Carol, one thing that comes up for a lot of families is about drop-off and pickup in the COVID environment, as our buildings won't have visitors enter the building. And just, I don't know if you had any initial thought, not to put you on the spot, but just initial thoughts about how did it work pre-COVID, and then maybe I can jump in with how it might be modified in a COVID environment.
Yeah, so pre-COVID, of course, families would generally come into the building and help their children to put away their things and, say goodbye, sign in, do all of the typical things. However, in the afternoons, the buildings were locked, and so we did have a staff member who would meet families at the exterior door and sign them in. I'm assuming that with the COVID, we would have the typical drop-off rituals, routines, hugs, sign-ins, but that they would happen at the exterior door as opposed to inside the classroom.
Yeah, that's exactly. Yeah. No, thank you, Carol. We just want to be realistic and honest about, some of the differences. I think where the location of the preschool is perfectly situated because it's right near the back entrance to Pelham School. So I think we'd be able to do that. I'd be much more concerned if it was located where like 6th grade was, which has a door, but it doesn't really go to any place accessible, and 5th and 6th grade. So, I think that is an advantage to where the room is currently located that way.
We also do have, excuse me,
no, please.
An outdoor space that's typically been just for preschool, which is really wonderful because we've had access to it all the time. And that's also been something in the afternoons that we've often had the afternoon pickup outside. And it would be something we could look at also having the morning drop off be outside when weather permits. And that would give a little more time for parents to help their children acclimate.
Another good question. Are we looking to start the school year in person in early September or phase in by starting out virtually? So it's an interesting question, particularly as last night I received an email, and Lee, I don't know, I forwarded it last night or this morning, so I don't know when you got it. But the state has now given us the ability to have 10 extra days for teacher professional development at the beginning of the year. And so the start date, the school committees vote on a schedule, but the kind of expected start date both across the state is now expected to be September 16th. And that's, I think, a really good, I think it's a good thing. I'll be honest with you. I think that, we want our teachers to be, our staff to be well situated, to be able to enter a COVID environment. Feel safe being in a COVID environment. We have purchased PPE or personal protective equipment for all staff members. And actually for preschool, it's a little more intensive because the idea of staying 6 feet away doesn't mesh with preschool staff, just with young kids. So it gives us time to do trainings for staff about that, trainings for how teaching might be a bit different in an in-person environment. And so I think, while the school committees need to vote, I think very likely September 16th would be the start date based on the professional development that we'd be able to offer staff. This would be in the first phase in terms of the Pelham Preschool. It would, again, early childhood education in general would be in the first phase of this, and preschool is certainly central to early childhood education, and as well as kindergarten and first grade. So it'd be right there with those 2 grade levels. And I think as we're waiting for other questions to perhaps come in, one thing that will follow this live stream will be just a quick follow-up asking for families if they choose to make a commitment for Pelham Preschool, again, to be virtual or in person, and be able to support that. We understand that some families will want to do that, and we understand if people are unable, right? This isn't a sell today or a sale. It's really trying to share accurate information about that, because our goal is we really want to get back to folks by the end of next week is our goal, because we know for some families, if we're not able to put on the program, that creates a real challenge. And some families will need to know that one way or the other, and we really need to let the staff know. Again, the staff will all have positions in one of the districts that I work for, but we want to make sure that staff have enough time to be placed and to know what they're planning on doing so that they can think about what their fall looks like as well. So I would guess that likely tomorrow, if not tomorrow, then Thursday, you should be getting a very quick thing. It'll probably come from Principal Whiting-Jones, and just asking an indication of where your family is. We'll probably ask for it back in about a week. We want to give people a little bit of time, but I know the Pelham School Committee is likely going to meet towards the end of next week, and with that data will drive the decision that they'll make. So I'm going to give it a little time if there are other questions that come in, and if there's not, I'm going to post my email address, and I'll also as a comment. And I don't know if Principal Whiting-Jones, if you can do the same, I think it'll allow you. Sorry, we don't use this feature of this tool very often. That way, if there are follow-up questions that people would like to ask confidentially, that people can have that opportunity to do so. Because I know one of the benefits of this is all the questions are public, and then yet some people may have questions. That opportunity to do so privately. One of the benefits of this is all the questions are public, and then yet some people may have questions. That opportunity to do so. One of the benefits of this is all the questions are public. Okay, there we go. Something weird was happening on that one. So Lee, you should probably just be able to do it on the comments feature if you have access to that. If you just write a comment instead of look at them, will that allow you to do it or no?
It didn't, but I went into the YouTube side and put a comment in, which is why there was the echo. I apologize about that, but it looks like it just popped up in the comments.
Oh, okay. I was just going to do it for you, but there you go. I see it. And Carol is not working in the summer, so I want to be conscious of her inbox. That's why I didn't ask her necessarily. But certainly, if you have a question for Carol, if you send it to Lee or myself, we'll get in touch with her. I just want to protect Carol's summer vacation as well as I can, because she's not a 12-month employee like Lee and myself. If there aren't other questions, then let me just look on the YouTube piece, because I think sometimes I can see if things come up. I do not see other questions. So I want to thank everyone for coming, for all the parents, guardians. Please look out. We'll try to get it out tomorrow. Principal Whiting-Jones is very quick. She might get it out today for all I know. But just a very quick survey. And it's really just going to ask, where are you with this? Is this something that you can commit to supporting the program all year, whether it's virtual or in person, or if you're not? And again, we understand that different families will have different answers to that question, and we'll see how many commitments we can get, and we'll communicate out to all the families next week, by the end of next week, what the decision is, so that families can use that for their planning. But we thank you very much for joining us. I want to particularly thank Carol for spending some of her summer morning with us. Again, this is not officially part of her job, but her willingness to do this is greatly appreciated. And thank you very much, Lee, for joining us as well. And again, you'll be on the lookout for an email within the next 24 to 48 hours. We'll probably ask for a timeline to get it back by probably a week from today, which I think is the 4th, something like that. And we'll go from there, and we'll communicate by the end of next week what the final decision is. But again, we appreciate your interest and engagement in Pelham Preschool, and we hope you have a wonderful day.
Okay, thank you. And thank you, Mike, for moderating.
Thanks.